Hey guys, it's Generalkidd here. How's everyone doing today? So, for today's video, we're going to be digging into Halo 1 on MCC PC and taking a look at the secret double speed power-up, which is essentially a cut power-up in the game that still exists in the game files on Mission Silent Cartographer. So the power-up I'm referring to is this one right here, which is exactly called the double speed power-up. And this is basically what it looks like. As you can see, it has some pretty glitched textures, but it is more or less pretty similar to the other power-ups in the game, which are the overshield and the active camo. However, the appearance is a little bit different, aside from the glitched textures. You can see inside, I believe that the shape's a little bit different than what we see with the other power-ups. And also, there seems to be like two color variations of this. We have the blue one here, and this green one here. I'm actually not sure why there's two color variations. There shouldn't be. It could just be like the lighting or the angle I'm looking at it from. But regardless, in anniversary graphics, there is no model for it. It's just a black cube, which is what happens to objects in anniversary graphics that in classic graphics they have a model, but none was made in anniversary, so that's why it defaults to a black cube. Just like the engineers. The engineers, you know, they have their cut models and everything in classic mode, but when you switch to anniversary, the engineers just turn to black cubes. But anyways, once we pick up the power-up, well, let's see what happens. So first of all, you might have noticed it said I picked up a flamethrower. I don't actually know why it's like that, but that's just what it is in the game files, and that's just what happens. It's probably just a placeholder text. But you know, aside from the thing with picking up a flamethrower, you may notice that all the enemies are now like freaking out and just like going crazy. Well, we'll get into that in a second. But aside from that, the double speed power-up does actually do what it says it does, which, as you can see there, it increases my speed by double. And I'm now running a lot faster. So it does increase my speed, almost like a sprint armor ability. It really just could be like a precursor to the sprint armor ability. I've actually had that debate with a few other people, and we weren't really sure whether double speed power-up could really be considered a precursor to sprint, because it is a power-up, but in a lot of ways it has a similar effects to sprint. Officially, Halo 2 was the first Halo game to have sprint in it, but it was just cut from the final game, but you could still bring it out with mods. But now with this, I don't know, it kind of could be like a precursor to sprint. So maybe Halo 1 was actually the first game where sprint was planned, but was cut. But of course, I don't know that for a fact either. That's just a speculation based on the effects of this. Now, as for the rest of this, well, the reason why the enemies are spazzing out is because the game is actually trying to make them go slow motion. Because that's what this armor effect is this power-up is supposed to do. It's supposed to make you go double speed, while also making everything else slow motion around you. If that sounds familiar, that's because that's kind of how, you know, like superheroes or like super characters like the Flash or Sonic, when they run super fast, everything around them like slows down, almost like time is slowing down, but they're going like really fast at the same time. It's basically supposed to be like a kind of like a effect sort of, which is actually more of like more relativity speaking, but that's another topic for another time. But it's actually kind of broken on MCC. It's pretty broken on MCC. On the original Halo 1 and Halo PC, well, actually, first of all, the effect does wear off after a while, so it does go back to normal until you pick up another one. But on the original Halo games, the slow motion does work correctly. Now, it's not 100% broken on MCC. As you can see, it still does work. And another interesting thing to note is that if you restart the mission, the effect does actually persist through restarts. It does not undo it. Actually, it actually kind of fixes it. Because now, instead of like everything spazzing out, the slow motion does actually pretty much work like it was on the original versions of Halo 1. So as you can see, everything is now running slower except for you. But that slowness actually does affect a lot of stuff like the game scripts, as well as like you know, the Pelican's flight paths, which is why, because the timing is now off due to slow motion, the Pelicans, when you restart the mission, will actually drop you off in the wrong spot, and you will fall and take a lot of damage. And none of the Marines will survive this fall as well. So that's one glitch that occurs. And aside from that, the Pelicans, like I said, their flight paths are messed up. They end up, when they're supposed to fly away, they end up crashing into the trees and kind of getting stuck. And the second pelican in particular ends up flipping a little bit, and you even get the option to like flip it, so you can mess with it a lot as well. And it's actually pretty fun to do this. And eventually the pelican will despawn and just, you know, vanish. But yeah, so aside from that, a lot of the other enemies are also back to normal. Not 100%. Like and when I say back to normal, I mean like how they were on the original versions of Halo 1 when you activate the double speed power up. But not every enemy is also like this. Some are still, you know, going crazy and spazzing out, but a lot will also be alright. So you can pretty much proceed through the mission somewhat normally at this point. But yeah, so that's essentially what the double speed power up does. Doubles your speed and slows everything down around you as if you're like a speedster or something, which you can actually use to your advantage, because during this part where the doors closes when you try to get in, you can actually run fast enough to get through the door before it closes, because normally the door closes before you can get through, and then you have to go, you know, to that security console to unlock it. But no, you can actually skip through and then kind of skip that whole part of the mission. However, when you come out later, assuming you still have the effect going on, which you could undo the effect by just picking up another power up, and then after a certain amount of time it will reset. But if you still have the effect going on, it causes Foehammer to land in the wrong spot to pick you up. Instead of, like, you know, landing down here outside the entrance, she lands on top of the mountain. But that's okay, because we can still get on top of the mountain and get on her pelican. So one more interesting thing I do want to point out about the double speed power up is that, like I mentioned, on OG Halo 1, like on OG Xbox and OG PC, the double speed power up does work a little more correctly with the slow motion stuff, unlike MCC where everything gets like really glitchy unless you restart the mission. However, there was one major bug back then, which is, even though it persists like after you restart the mission, on the OG versions, it not only persists after you restart the mission, but also persists even if you end the game and go into like multiplayer or something. It would still have the same effect in custom games or any other mission, which is pretty crazy actually, and was a pretty major bug. And I could actually see why the thing was cut from the final game, because, you know, maybe at the time Bungie was having trouble correctly implementing it, and it was maybe too much trouble than it's worth, or too buggy, and they weren't able to do it correctly. That, of course, doesn't affect MCC, though. But anyways, we've just finished the mission. As you can see, it's still possible. However, it is kind of glitchy with the cutscene, as in the cutscene's kind of messed with, where Foehammer's Pelican is not always where it's supposed to be. Sometimes it's in the wrong position, and you can see here where it's supposed to touch down, it's kind of like off target. But after this part, the cutscene does go back to normal and everything is fine again. But anyways, there you guys have it. That is basically what the double speed power up does, which, to sum it up one more time, the double speed power up doubles your run speed and also makes everything around you slow motion, as if you were some kind of like superhero or something. I'd also like to hear your thoughts about the double speed power up being the precursor to sprint in Halo. It's definitely debatable. But other than that, if you guys did find this video to be interesting, and if you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like. I'll leave your thoughts and comments. Let me know if there's anything else for me to check out or look into. But other than that, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all next time. Bye, guys!